The coffee machine hissed its final, pathetic breath, sputtering a few brown droplets into Leo's world's best programmer mug, a gift from his mother that felt more like an accusation with each passing day. He sighed, the sound swallowed by the cavernous, sterile open-plan office of Ethel and Gauss, a tech giant specializing in making the world more connected while simultaneously isolating every one of its employees behind soundproof headphones and towering monitors. Leo Thorne was a man built for logic, for the clean, elegant lines of code that obeyed his every command. The messy, unpredictable chaos of human interaction was a bug he'd never managed to patch. In the epicenter of that chaos, the human equivalent of a corrupted file sat precisely 15 feet away. Elara Vance. He risked a glance over the top of his monitor. She was standing by her desk, a flurry of organized motion. Her sharp, intelligent face was animated as she explained something to a junior marketer, her hands weaving intricate patterns in the air. She wore a crimson blazer that screamed confidence, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail that left no room for nonsense. To Leo, it was a uniform of a corporate shark, a creature that thrived on meetings, buzzwords, and the subtle art of taking credit for other people's work. Just last week, she dismantled his entire proposal for streamlining the user interface in front of the entire product team. Aesthetically sterile, she called it, lacking in intuitive, emotional resonance. He'd spent 2 months on that code. She'd spent 20 minutes tearing it down with a smile that didn't reach her cool, gray eyes. The memory was a fresh wound. He turned back to his mug, jabbing the coffee machine's buttons with more force than necessary. Thorne, having a dialogue with the appliance. The voice, smooth as polished glass and just as cold, made him flinch. Elara was standing by the machine, holding her own pristine ceramic cup, no doubt hand-thrown by some artisan in the Andes. It's unresponsive, he muttered, refusing to meet her gaze. Perhaps it's your approach. You have to be firm, but gentle, like handling a skittish animal. She reached over, her perfume, notes of sandalwood and something citrusy, invading his personal space. With a series of deft, precise taps, she initiated a cleaning cycle and then a fresh brew. The machine gurgled to life obediently. See? It's all about understanding the system, she said, her tone laced with a condescension that set his teeth on edge. Some of us prefer systems that don't require psychological profiling, he retorted, snatching his mug away as the coffee began to flow. She gave him that infuriating smile again. A limited worldview, Leo. It's why your interfaces look like they were designed by a sentient spreadsheet. With that, she turned and walked back to her domain, the click of her heels a percussive dismissal. Leo seethed. He spent the rest of the morning buried in lines of Python, building digital fortresses to keep the real world out. At noon, a company-wide email popped up. The subject line, Ethel and Gauss Wellness Initiative. Connect with your inner colleague. He almost deleted it immediately. These corporate attempts at forced camaraderie were a special kind of hell. But his eyes caught on a bullet point, the anonymous pen pal program. A chance to share, vent, and connect in a safe, confidential space. No names, no departments, just genuine human connection. A cynical laugh escaped him. Genuine human connection? Here? But then, a treacherous thought wriggled into his mind. A space to vent. To say all the things he couldn't say in the echo chamber of the office. To tell someone, anyone, about the soul-crushing weight of his micromanaging boss, about the sheer incompetence of the marketing team, about her. It was either this, or start paying for therapy he couldn't afford. With a grunt of resignation, he clicked the sign-up link. Elara Vance deleted the wellness email without a second thought. She found such initiatives patronizing. Her wellness was managed by a strict 5 a.m. spin class, a nutritionist, and the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly executed quarterly report. Connection was a strategic tool, not an emotional need. It was her assistant, a sweet, anxious young woman named Chloe, who brought it up again. Elara, don't you think it sounds lovely? A secret friend? It's so romantic. It's a data harvesting scheme disguised as altruism, Chloe, Elara said, not looking up from her spreadsheet. They'll probably use our insecurities to tailor more effective productivity propaganda. Oh, Chloe's face fell. I already signed up. Elara sighed internally. She had a soft spot for Chloe, a vulnerability she carefully hid from the rest of the office. The girl reminded her of herself, a decade ago, eager to please, easily bruised. Fine, Elara said, softening her tone. I'll sign up too. For solidarity. It was a small, meaningless gesture, but the beam of gratitude on Chloe's face was surprisingly potent. That evening, in the stark, minimalist silence of her high-rise apartment, another email arrived. This one was from the program's automated system. Congratulations. You have been matched with a pen pal. Your unique correspondence ID is penpal_AG_774. All communication will be routed through this secure server. Your first letter is below. Elara poured a glass of Pinot Noir, intrigued despite herself. She opened the message. Dear Anonymous, I'm not sure why I'm doing this. It feels like shouting into a void, but the company HR assures me this void is confidential. So here goes. Today, I had another run-in with my personal muzak, the background noise of my professional life that is consistently, gratingly awful. This person is the human embodiment of a pop-up ad. Flashy, intrusive, and offering nothing of value. They dismantled months of my work with a few well-placed, pseudo-intellectual barbs. I sometimes wonder if they derive a kind of vampiric energy from the frustration of others. I code to build order from chaos. They seem to exist solely to create it. Anyway, that's my shout. Over to you. Sincerely, your anonymous pen pal. Elara read it twice. A slow smile spread across her face. This was refreshing. No corporate veneer, no polite small talk. This was raw, unfiltered frustration. And she knew exactly the type of person they were describing. She'd met dozens of them. Brilliant in their narrow technical fields, but utterly incapable of seeing the bigger picture, of understanding that people, not machines, were the end users. She took a sip of wine and began to type, her fingers flying across the keyboard with uncharacteristic passion. Dear Anonymous, your shout was a welcome burst of clarity in an otherwise sanitized day. I believe I work adjacent to your muzak. In my world, they are this sentient spreadsheet. They believe the universe can be reduced to binary code, and that human emotion is an inconvenient variable to be optimized away. They sit in their cubicles, building digital castles they think are elegant, never realizing they've forgotten to install the doors. They are condescending, socially obtuse, and seem to believe that anyone who can articulate a thought without using a programming language is intellectually inferior. It's exhausting. So, tell me, what did your muzak do today that was so egregious? I could use the catharsis. Yours, your equally anonymous pen pal. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt a genuine spark of connection. It was a spark born of mutual, anonymous hatred, but it was real. Leo stared at the response on his phone, his bus rattling through the rain-slicked city streets. He'd expected a bland, sympathetic reply, maybe some generic advice. He had not expected this. A perfectly aimed torpedo that sank his own battleship with terrifying accuracy. Sentient spreadsheet. The phrase hit him with the force of a physical blow. It was a label he'd feared in the quiet, insecure corners of his mind. And the description, forgotten to install the doors. Was that what he did? Was that why Elara Vance always looked at his work with such disdain? A strange feeling bubbled up in his chest. Not anger, but a sharp, startling sense of recognition. His pen pal wasn't just venting. They were articulating a perspective he'd never truly considered. They were on the other side of the battlefield, staring back at him. That night, he wrote back. He described the coffee machine incident in excruciating detail, framing Elara's actions not just as annoying, but as a symbolic power play. He wrote about the soul-deep weariness of translating his passion, his clean, logical code, into the vapid language of marketing for people who didn't understand its beauty. The reply came the next morning. Your muzak and my spreadsheet should be locked in a room together. they'd probably annihilate each other in a matter of seconds, leaving the rest of us in peace. Your description of the coffee machine was a masterpiece of petty frustration. I applaud it. But let me offer you the other side of that coin. What you saw as a power play, I see as simple competence. Why should anyone, especially a woman, have to stand by while a man fruitlessly assaults a machine? We are always having to prove our competence, to be firm but gentle, just to be heard. Perhaps your muzak is just tired. Leo read it at his desk, the words landing differently in the cold light of day. He glanced over at Elara. She was on the phone, her expression focused, a faint line of concentration between her brows. For the first time, he didn't just see an adversary. He saw a person who might also be tired. The correspondence became the secret heartbeat of his days. They never wrote about work projects or specific names, maintaining the fragile veil of anonymity. They wrote about their childhoods. Leo confessed his lonely adolescence, spent in his bedroom building computers and escaping into fantasy novels, a refuge from a world that found him too quiet, too intense. His pen pal wrote about the immense pressure of being the golden child, of a family that expected nothing less than perfection, and the exhausting performance of confidence she had to maintain every single day. They see the blazer in the presentation, she wrote one night. They don't see the little girl who used to hide in the library because she was afraid of failing her piano recital. Now, the whole world is a piano recital, and the audience is always waiting for a wrong note. Leo's heart ached when he read that. He pictured someone like Chloe, sweet and nervous. He began to craft his responses with a care he usually reserved for his most complex code. He offered words of encouragement, little digital reassurances that she was more than her job title. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Elara found herself eagerly checking her email each evening. Her pen pal was unexpectedly thoughtful, deeply intelligent beneath the layer of cynicism. His descriptions of his lonely childhood stirred a protective instinct in her. He saw the world in such a stark, structural way, and she found herself wanting to show him the colors he was missing. "You build the doors," she wrote one evening, after a particularly brutal day where Leo had stubbornly refused to adapt his code to her campaign's new direction. "But my job is to make people actually want to walk through them. It's not pseudo-intellectualism. It's about understanding desire, fear, hope. It's about story. Your spreadsheet isn't a villain. He's just an author who doesn't believe in his own story." She wrote that, and then she sat back, stunned. She had just defended Leo Thorne. In a roundabout, anonymous way, she had found a sliver of empathy for him. The office became a different place. A silent, secret game. Leo would hear Elara make a pointed comment in a meeting, and instead of just fuming, he would wonder, is this her being a shark? Or is this her tired? He started to notice the dark circles under her eyes on Friday afternoons. He saw the way she patiently mentored Chloe, her tone losing its sharp edge. For Elara, watching Leo became a study in quiet intensity. She saw the way his whole body stilled when he was deep in thought, his focus so absolute it was like a physical force. She noticed he always helped the intern with his code, his explanations patient and clear, devoid of the condescension he so often showed her. The sentient spreadsheet was beginning to develop a frustratingly complex operating system. The turning point, the moment that tectonic plates of their reality began to shift, was the Henderson Project. It was a massive, high-stakes campaign for their biggest client. Elara's vision was bold, emotional, a narrative-driven launch. Leo's technical requirements were rigid, built for stability and security. They were at an impasse. The final planning meeting was a disaster. "It can't be done, Elara," Leo said flatly, his arms crossed. "The data load from your interactive emotional core would crash the servers. It's a fundamentally unsound architecture." "Then find a sounder architecture, Leo," she shot back, her voice tight. "This isn't a university coding exercise. This is the real world, where elegant code doesn't matter if no one wants to use the product." The room fell silent. Their colleagues looked anywhere but at them. The animosity was a thick, toxic fog. That night, both of them went home and did the same thing. They poured a drink, and turned to their pen pal. Leo's message was frantic. My muzak is going to get us all fired. She's demanding the impossible, prioritizing flair over function, and she has the entire board convinced it's a good idea. I feel like I'm the only one who can see the cliff we're about to drive off. I'm not just frustrated. I'm scared. Elara's was despondent. My spreadsheet is going to sink the most important project of my career. He's so entrenched in his logic that he's blind to the vision. He's refusing to innovate, to take a single risk. I've staked my reputation on this, and he's pulling the foundation out from under me with a smug, condescending certainty. I thought I understood him a little, but today, I felt pure, undiluted hatred. They had written their truths, their deepest professional fears, to the one person they thought would understand. And they had, in doing so, perfectly described the other. The replies were a study in their growing bond. Elara wrote to Leo, "It sounds like you're both talking past each other. You see the cliff, she sees the horizon. Is there no middle ground? A safer path to the same destination? You clearly have a brilliant structural mind. Could you not architect a solution, rather than just listing the problems? Sometimes, the people we perceive as obstacles are just mirrors showing us our own limitations." Leo wrote to Elara, "Hate is a strong word, and exhausting. You've written before about the performance, the pressure. It sounds like this project is the culmination of all that for you. Your spreadsheet is probably terrified of public failure, of the chaos of a crashed server. His logic is his armor. Maybe if you spoke to him not as an obstacle, but as the co-architect of the solution, appeal to his pride in his work. Frame it as a challenge for his skills, not a rejection of them." They were both, unknowingly, giving each other the key to their own deadlock. The next day, something different happened. Elara, remembering her pen pal's words, walked over to Leo's desk. She didn't stand over him. She pulled up a chair. "Leo," she said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "The Henderson Project. I know you think it's a disaster. Help me make it not one. Your architecture is brilliant. Show me how we can build my vision on top of it. What's the strongest part of the foundation we have?" Leo, armed with his pen pal's advice, looked at her. He saw the faint tremor in her hand resting on the desk. He saw the desperate hope in her eyes, buried beneath the professional veneer. This wasn't the corporate shark. This was the little girl afraid of the wrong note. He took a deep breath. "The user authentication and data streaming modules are solid," he said, his tone losing its defensive edge. "The bottleneck is the real-time rendering engine for your interactive elements. It's not that it can't be done. It's that my initial approach was wrong for this specific load." Elara's eyes widened. "So, it's a problem with the tool, not the idea?" "Exactly." For the next 2 hours, they huddled over his monitor. He explained the technical constraints in plain English. She translated her vision into practical requirements. They argued, but it was a productive friction, the sound of two minds grinding against each other to create a spark, not a fire. They found a middle ground, a slightly scaled-back interactive experience that was still emotionally resonant but wouldn't melt their servers. It was the most collaborative hour they had ever spent. That evening, their pen pal letters were triumphant. "You were right," Leo wrote. "I approached it all wrong. I saw her as the problem. Today, we saw each other as part of the solution. It was different." "You were right," Elara wrote, a giddy smile on her face. "I use your advice. I appealed to the architect, not the obstacle. We had a breakthrough. It was the most connected I've ever felt to him." The Henderson Project launch was a spectacular success. The client was thrilled, the board was impressed, and for a brief, shining moment, Leo and Elara were the office's golden duo. They shared a glass of cheap champagne in the break room, their eyes meeting over the rims of their cups with a new, unspoken understanding. The anonymous correspondence, meanwhile, had deepened into something profound. The professional venting had given way to personal revelations. Leo wrote about his fear of never connecting with anyone, of being alone with his computers forever. Elara confessed her loneliness at the top, the way her ambition had become a wall that kept people out. They were two souls stripped bare in the digital darkness, finding solace in each other's words. And then the company announced the Wellness Initiative Gala, a celebratory party to mark the program's success. The kicker, it was the night the anonymous pen pals would be revealed to each other. A cold dread settled in both their stomachs. For the first time, their letters were filled with anxiety. What if we've built this connection in a vacuum? Elara wrote. What if, in person, with faces and names, the magic evaporates? What if he's disappointing? Or worse, what if it's someone I can't stand? Leo felt the same paralyzing fear. This person has seen parts of me my own family hasn't. What if I see disappointment in their eyes when they realize I'm just a quiet, awkward programmer? What if it's someone from accounting? What if it's... His mind, traitorously, flashed to Elara. The thought was so absurd, he dismissed it instantly. His pen pal was empathetic, kind, understanding. Elara Vance was... Elara Vance. The night of the gala arrived. The office was transformed. Twinkling lights, a jazz trio, flowing wine. Leo stood near the wall, tugging at the collar of his ill-fitting suit. Elara was a vision in a simple, emerald green dress, a stark contrast to her usual power armor. She held a glass of wine, her heart hammering against her ribs. The CEO took the microphone. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the reveal of our anonymous pen pals. When I call your correspondence ID, please come to the stage and meet the colleague you've been connecting with. One by one, pairs of people walked up, laughing, hugging, some looking shocked, others delighted. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Pinpull underscore 221 and pinpull underscore AG underscore 467. Two women from sales squealed and ran to embrace each other. Pinpull underscore 590 and pinpull underscore AG underscore 113. A young man from IT blushed furiously as he shook hands with the head of HR. Leo's palms were sweating. Elara took a nervous sip of wine. And now the CEO boomed, our final match. A pair who, according to our system, had the most active and lengthy correspondence in the entire program. Please come forward. Penpal underscore AG underscore 774. The world slowed down. The blood drained from Leo's face. The air left Elara's lungs. That was their ID. Theirs. For a frozen second, they stood rooted to the spot, their eyes scanning the crowd, looking for their mystery person. And then their gazes locked. Across the crowded, glittering room, Leo, Thorne, and Elara Vance stared at each other. The noise of the party faded into a dull roar. The shock on his face was a perfect mirror of the devastation on hers. It couldn't be. It was impossible. The Muzak, the spreadsheet, the kind, understanding confidant, the witty, empathetic friend. They were the same person. The world they had so carefully built in their emails shattered into a million jagged pieces. Without a word, Elara turned on her heel, placed her glass on a table, and walked out of the ballroom, her head held high, the click of her heels the only sound Leo could hear. The following Monday was an ice age. The tentative truce was over. The collaboration was dead. The air between their desks was so thick with unspoken words it was difficult to breathe. Leo was reeling. Every kind word, every moment of shared vulnerability had been with her. The person he had despised. The person who had seen the most fragile parts of him. The humiliation was a physical burn. He had been pouring his heart out to Elara Vance. Elara was furious. It felt like the ultimate betrayal. He had known it was her all along. She was sure of it. He had played her for a fool, gathering her insecurities as ammunition, laughing at her with every heartfelt confession. The sentient spreadsheet had run the most cruel and efficient algorithm of all on her emotions. They didn't speak. They didn't email. The pen pal server was silent. Weeks passed. The office settled back into its old cold rhythm. But the silence between them was different now. It wasn't just animosity. It was the ghost of what could have been a haunting, painful presence. Leo tried to go back to his code, but felt hollow. The logic offered no comfort. He kept remembering her words. The little girl who used to hide in the library. He saw that little girl now, in the proud, lonely woman across from him. Elara tried to lose herself in new campaigns, but her passion was gone. She kept remembering his words. a refuge from a world that found him too quiet, too intense. She saw that lonely boy in the quiet, intense man she now refused to look at. The breaking point came during a team-building exercise, another one of HR's brilliant ideas. They were, of course, put on the same team. The task was an escape room. It was a disaster. They stood in a room designed like a steampunk library, surrounded by puzzles, in utter, stubborn silence. "We're not getting out unless we talk," Leo finally said, his voice rough. "I have nothing to say to you," Elara replied, examining a brass astrolabe. "You had plenty to say for weeks. Pages and pages." The words burst out of him, raw and pained. She whirled around, her eyes flashing. "That wasn't me. That was for someone else. It was a lot." "Was it?" he challenged, stepping closer. "Was it a lie when you wrote about hiding in the library? Was it a lie when you said you felt like the whole world was a piano recital? Because I saw that. I see that. In you. Every single day." She stared at him, stunned into silence. The mask was gone. He wasn't looking at the corporate shark. He was looking at the woman from the emails. "And was it a lie when I wrote about building computers to escape?" He continued, his voice dropping. "When I told you I was afraid, I'd be alone forever. You saw me, Elara, the real me. And I saw you, the real you. And it wasn't through some anonymous server. It was through our words." Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Why didn't you say anything?" "After the gala, I was in shock," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "And then, I was ashamed. And I thought you hated me. I thought the real me, the one with a face and a name, was a disappointment. I thought you were mocking me," she whispered, her defiance crumbling. "I would never," he said, his voice so soft it was almost a caress. "Your words, they were the most real thing that has ever happened to me in this place." He gestured around the fake library. It was just the two of them, surrounded by the artifacts of fictional world, but the truth between them had never been more palpable. "The coffee machine," she said suddenly, a watery smile touching her lips. "I wasn't trying to be condescending. I hate seeing things done inefficiently. And you looked so frustrated." A genuine laugh escaped Leo, a sound she'd never heard from him before. It transformed his face. "And my proposal you tore apart? The aesthetically sterile one?" She had the decency to look sheepish. But it was also brilliant in its architecture. I was just too proud to admit I didn't understand half of it. So I attacked the half I did." They stood there, in the quiet of the room, the weight of their shared history settling around them, not as a burden, but as a foundation. "So," Leo said, picking up a puzzle piece from the table. It was a cog that fit into the astrolabe, the anonymous pen pal program. Was it a success or a failure? Elara looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the sentient spreadsheet, yes. But she also saw the lonely boy, the brilliant architect, and the man who had cherished her most vulnerable words. He saw the muzak, the corporate shark, the little girl in the library, and the woman who had given him a reason to look up from his code. She reached out and took the cog from his hand. Her fingers brushed against his, and a spark, real and undeniable, passed between them. "I think," she said softly, sliding the cog into place with a satisfying click, "it's still in beta, and it has a few bugs to work out." A slow, true smile spread across Leo's face. "I'm good with bugs." The lock on the escape room door clicked open.